Economizers have always been confusing to set up and troubleshoot. Small dials to turn, with no indication of what the positions mean, selector switches with letters, mysterious blinking LEDs, installation instructions with psychrometric curves, and more. But with the Zip Economizer from Belimo, problems solved. Just 2 basic steps, and it's automatically customized for your exact location, based on your US zip code or Canadian postal code. Here's how easy it is. Step 1. Using the up and down arrows, enter each digit of the zip or postal code for your location, hitting OK after each one to select it. Then just hit Escape to get to the next parameter to set. The Zip Economizer automatically configures the free cooling high limit changeover temperature or enthalpy setting. Step 2. When the ventilation minimum position submenu displays, press OK and set the percentage of fresh outside air for ventilation in accordance with local standards for your building type. And that's it. In 30 seconds, the automatic operation of the Zip Economizer begins. In fact, it's even plug and play, so it recognizes any additional devices you might have, like a CO2 sensor, and you can just as easily monitor all the parameters in real time. From the status line, hit any key and the Monitor Live Conditions submenu displays, where you can view the changeover setting and climate zone configured by the zip code, as well as other live conditions. And troubleshooting? The built-in fault detection and diagnostics feature tells you exactly what's wrong, but more than that, it initiates alarms and reconfigures for best operation. Zip Economizer, the fast route to reliable energy savings. Since its inception in 1975, Belimo has innovated the major developments in HVAC actuator technology and become a worldwide leader in HVAC. So what are you waiting for? Visit us online today.
All right, so hopefully that played without little issue. There was a little time delay on my side at the end there. But this is our agenda for today. Basically going to cover why would someone economize, talk about Belimo's Zip Economizer, setup and operation, and the Belimo difference from other economizers that are out there. So why are we forced to economize? Pretty much because ASHRAE said so. ASHRAE codes and standards in 2007 required economizers in the following climate zones for east of their magical borderline. And at the time, it did not cover Atlanta per se. However, in 2010, they changed those standards to include the southeast and also lower the tonnage of units that did require economizers. So ASHRAE standards have basically cut up the United States into different climate zones based on different geographical types. So older economizers, how would you have to find this high limit changeover temperature? You would unfortunately have to start with a copy of 90.1 and shuffle your way through that. Then you would probably have to find a climate zone map. You would need the climate changeover chart that correlates to that changeover map. And on a really bad day, you may need a psychometric chart. But what we've done at Belimo is finding out what your high limit changeover temperature is to be compliant with ASHRAE standards is as simple as knowing your zip code. Plugging in your zip code and you're done. Now, just don't take my word for it. Let's use an example. So this is a zip code that we may be familiar with. Our Zip Economizer, once you've plugged in that zip code, it'll tell you what that climate zone is, and more importantly, what that high limit temperature is set to. Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. Now that high limit temperature is straightly directed and pulled from the ASHRAE tables. So by just plugging in your zip code, you have plugged in your climate zone and your high limit changeover temperature. Now this temperature is adjustable, but again, if it is adjusted, it may not be ASHRAE compliant, but it is a question we get asked quite often. Okay. So a little bit about the Zip Economizer. The reason it's called a zip is because of our patented zip code technology, our zip code setup that I talked about earlier. And also because it's so easy to set up. At least we hope it is. Plug and play. If it's not plugged into the device, you won't have to worry about setting it up. And more importantly, you don't have to worry about seeing settings or menu tree options for a product you don't have. For example, if you don't have a CO2 sensor or you're not doing demand controlled ventilation, you will never see anything in the menu populate about a CO2 sensor. Alarm history. Not only do we show you current alarms, we will show you historic alarms, so that if an alarm got fixed itself and you show up on the roof and you're fixing it, you can say, oh, this is a trend that's going on. Onboard help. We're the first and only economizer on the market to have built-in onboard help every step of the way to allow you to set up and troubleshoot the device. Functional testing allows you to know before you leave the roof that everything's set up and ready to go. Modular design. It's built for expansion. Rooms change, buildings change, and we need to change with those times. So I talked a little bit about that onboard information help text. Sometimes I know personally I'm setting up my DVR and I don't know what is coming up, what the error codes mean. It basically need a manual to troubleshoot my DVR at times. But with the Zip, you won't have that same puzzled look. Whenever you see the eye icon on the display, all you have to do is press the corresponding eye button and the following messages will appear, allowing you to understand what that setting in this case means, and more importantly, what you have to do in order to set that up. But we do much more than just economize. We also do demand control ventilation. We work with CO2 sensors. Compressor protection, because an economizer should also work in protecting the rooftop unit and ensuring its integrity. 2-speed fan control, as well with variable frequency drives. Pre-occupancy purge. We have a manual mode built in. We are Title 24 compliant for the state of California. Fault detection and diagnostics. Not only do we detect faults, we help you troubleshoot it and we reconfigure for the best operation. And we have brownout and freeze protection, which by the sounds of it, you guys are about as cold as I am up here today. So a little bit about the setup. We did talk about the zip code setup, but out of the box, the Zip will now function without putting in your zip code in your minimum position. When the zip code is entered, the Zip will use it to reference the ASHRAE lookup table, as I mentioned earlier, in order for you to understand and know what that set point to that specific zip code is. Eliminating the guesswork, eliminating the need for curves or dials or switches or ABC curves that no one really understands. Now, the minimum damper position set point should be set regarding your ASHRAE 62.1 standards. The minimum hardware that's required for the Zip to operate is your outside air temperature sensor, your supply air temperature sensor. The RTU needs at least 1 compressor and 2 stages of cooling. Now, plug and play. I mentioned a little bit about this earlier, but this is a graphic to kind of illustrate what it means. As soon as you've plugged in a supply air temperature sensor, it has detected there is a supply air temperature sensor there. It'll prompt you to say if it's a CO2 sensor, an additional item needs to be installed. For example, setting your ppm levels. But as soon as it's plugged in, it's detected. Now, damper scaling. In the video, we highlighted our new damper scaling feature. Now, no 2 dampers are built exactly alike. What's 90% or fully open for one damper may only be 60% for one damper. And that's just how the world we live in. No 2 dampers, unfortunately, are built the same. So by creating this damper scaling protocol, we fully open the damper, and whatever fully open becomes, that is your new full 100%. So what this is showing is just illustrating the different menu options, how it goes through it. It tells you that the damper scaling was successful, and it'll tell you that 76 degrees of that rotation is 100%. You don't have to adjust what your minimum position is set to. It'll configure whatever 10% is of that maximum stroke. Now, a little bit about economizing strategies in general. High limit changeover strategies are used to determine the most appropriate outside air conditions for enabling and disabling of economizer cycles. Too low a set point can mean that useful economizing conditions just aren't being used. Now, on the other side, too high a set point can mean that additional mechanical cooling is needed and you're turning on the compressors when you don't need to. These strategies, single dry bulb, differential dry bulb, single enthalpy, and differential enthalpy, can be used to eliminate a lot of these issues. Now, the Zip is configured to work with all these different control strategy types. So a little bit about the single dry bulb configuration. In this configuration, you would have a 10K type 2 temperature sensor, or the Belimo temperature sensor, in your outside air intake, as well as a temperature sensor in the supply duct. Now, what does this mean? How do we go about economizing in just single dry bulb? Now, bear with me, this graph comes in and out a little bit. Now, in phase 1, if we're looking at this section right here, economizing is enabled. You have the temperatures, outdoor temperature below the high limit, everything's working appropriately. Now, in phase 2 that's highlighted, that line has surpassed the temperature high limit, which is set by ASHRAE. So economizing has been disabled. In order for economizing to turn back on, you will have to drop 2 degrees below that high limit temperature set point in order for economizing to be re-enabled. And the reason for that is temperatures fluctuate. They go up and down very often. You need to make sure you're below the 2 degrees in order to make sure that you're within range to start economizing again. Now, what we've also done in our brand new installation and operation manual, which Kevin has a few draft copies of, and the final version is available online as of today on zipeconomizer.com. We've updated all of our wiring diagrams to make it a little easier and more succinct as to how to set up this economizer and how to wire it. Now, what we've done is we've created a unique wiring diagram for every configuration. So if your application is single dry bulb, you just have to look at the single dry bulb wiring diagram. You don't have to look at a differential enthalpy and try and say, okay, well, I don't need the humidity sensors. How do I work this out? Now, single enthalpy, you would have your temperature and humidity sensor on the outside air intake, as well as a 10K sensor in your supply. Now, what this is your outdoor air enthalpy is going to be calculated from your outside air temperature and your outside humidity. Now, this chart's a little more involved, so we're going to kind of walk through this again in phases. Phase 1, economizing is enabled. Both your outdoor air enthalpy and your outdoor air temperature, the orange line and the blue line, are both below their high limits. We're working fine. However, when we get to this highlighted region here, the outside air temperature goes higher than your differential temperature high limit. So economizing is disabled, very similar to what we saw in the single dry bulb example earlier. In phase 3 of the graph, economizing is enabled again because we've gone below that limit. Now, in the final stage, the outdoor air enthalpy, which again is calculated from temperature and humidity, goes higher than that high limit, so the economizing is disabled. Works very similar to a single dry bulb configuration. You're just adding enthalpy to it. Again, we've taken a lot of the guesswork out and created these very single-driven control strategy wiring diagrams. And again, if you are seeing these later on, if you have one in the field, and you have any edits or updates or suggestions, please feel free to contact us. We're constantly updating our literature to be more friendly and easier to use. So the more feedback we get from the field, the better our documentation will be. And that goes for all our products. Differential dry bulb. For this particular example, what you're doing is you're using an outside air and return air temperature sensors for this strategy. Again, you would always have your 10K sensor in the supply. No graph for this. Oh, there is a graph. What this one is 4 different phases. Phase 1, your economizing is enabled. In phase 2, your outside air temperature goes higher than the differential temperature high limit, so your economizing is disabled. Now, in this particular case, the temperature needs to drop 2 degrees, just like before, in order for economizing to be enabled again. Once it's enabled, in this particular case, you see that the outside air temperature and the return air temperature lines are closer than 2 degrees. So economizing is disabled. The delta T of that temperature would have to rise 4 degrees in order to re-enable the economizer. And again, our wiring diagram showing both the outside air temperature sensor as well as the return air temperature sensor. For differential enthalpy, what we're using are 2 temperature and humidity sensors, one on the outside air intake and the other in the return. You must have all of these connected in order for this strategy to work. In this particular graph, this one has 6 phases. So this will be the last one, I promise. Phase 1, your economizing is enabled. In phase 2, your outside air temperature goes higher than the differential temperature high limit, just like we saw a few graphs earlier. So the economizing is disabled. Now in this section here, what we see is that the outdoor air enthalpy, which again is calculated from temperature and humidity, goes higher than the enthalpy high limit. So your economizing becomes disabled once again. After it's re-enabled, in this phase here, your differential is closer than 1 BTU per pound, just like we saw when we were doing with differential temperature. That has to go exceed 2.5 BTUs per pound in order for economizing to re-enable. So in this particular example, we're looking at many different items. We're looking at the temperature side, the humidity side, and we're really trying to make sure that we're utilizing only the best air possible to facilitate and cool the rooms and the spaces. And finally, the most complicated of our wiring diagrams, because it is for differential enthalpy. So a little bit about the different automatic states that you go through with any economizer, not just with the Zip. So in a free cooling mode, or economizing mode as it's more commonly called, the outside air damper will be used to provide for all the cooling. No compressors will be energized, and by definition, this mode is when Y1, there's a call for Y1 from the thermostat, and the outside air is deemed suitable for economizing. No compressors will run. This is where you're seeing that maximum energy savings. In integrated cooling mode, the thermostat has called for 2 stages of cooling, both Y1 and Y2. The damper will be locked at 100% to provide for the first stage of cooling. And it has to be in that position for a certain number of seconds in order to make sure that either A, you can facilitate the cooling required by the space, or if they need to turn on the extra compressor. In this case, you need to turn on the extra compressor, stage 1 of cooling, in order to make sure that the space is fully satisfied by the request from the thermostat. In mechanical cooling, it is the same as the ventilation mode, in the sense that you have your calls for cooling. However, your outside air damper, your outside air is not suitable to cool the space inside. It's not cutting with the calls from the thermostat. So what we've done is we have the damper at a minimum position, and we're fully cooling the room with your compressors. So again, your stage 1 cooling will be on. There will be a call from the thermostat, and your stage 2 or Y2 cooling could either be on or off depending on the space. Now, the latest Zip Economizer software is fully compatible with heat pump operation. We have 3 settings available: O, B, W1, very standard. O is the reversing valve will be powered for cooling, B is that it's powered for heating, and W1 is your standard thermostat reversing valve by the internal RTU board. It works according to all those items, very standard. But the latest Zip Economizer software has the setting for heat pump. Now the energy module. I get asked a lot, okay, so we have this base unit. What else does the Zip do? With this one module, our energy module, you would need this to do pre-occupancy purge, which is basically when you are ventilating or purging, off-gassing any particular space or building or room before occupants come in. Remote damper override will allow you to override the damper using a 2 to 10 signal or a potentiometer. Main control ventilation utilizing CO2 sensors, very standard. 2-speed fan control, as well as exhaust fan control, and VFDs are all incorporated into this one energy module. So if you did need to use CO2 or any of these other features, you would need the additional energy module. Now, a little bit about what we do just beyond economizing. So like I mentioned earlier, we're really looking at reducing and facilitating and protecting the rooftop unit and compressors as a whole. So the compressor reduced cooling detection is used to alarm a malfunctioning compressor stage. So what we do is we ensure that if the supply air temperature has not dropped by at least 5 degrees after 4 minutes, an alarm is generated. That must mean that something's not going right with the compressors. There's a bigger issue going on in the rooftop unit. Freeze protection. If the supply air temperature falls below 45 degrees and the outside air temperature is below 38 degrees, the damper will close past minimum position. It'll fully close. And that's really to protect the unit as a whole. Supply air temperature low limit will either disable one or both compressors depending on that supply air temperature. Again, to protect the compressors. Short cycle prevention. So what this means is that the compressors will have a minimum 3 minutes off, 3 minutes on time. And this is really to allow everything to recycle and de-energize from the compressors. So when we were creating the Zip Economizer, we had a lot of discussions with different compressor manufacturers. And we tried to find a standard across both their literature and what the RTU manufacturers are saying. And 3 minutes is what the compressor manufacturers, for example, Copeland, do recommend that they cycle through. Simultaneous on-off prevention. This prevents both compressors from coming on or off at the same time. So what that does is it prevents a big load coming into any building. Brownout protection. We're basically monitoring the power to the device, and we'll stop the compressors if the input voltage to the Zip drops below 75% of the 24 volts for more than 30 seconds. Again, to protect the integrity of the compressor. Random on is a very unique feature. So what this is let's assume there's a blackout in a city block, what have you. Now, as soon as power returns to the grid, what ends up happening is you have a jolt of energy going through the grid. You have overload going to it. All the rooftop units are turning on at the same time. And unfortunately, that'll also mean a lot of compressors will be turning on at the same time. So what we do is we have this random sequence. Every Zip Economizer is utilized a different random number if power is turned off to it in order to make sure that not all the compressors on the rooftop unit are turned on at the same time to protect the grid. Again, additional items that we offer: reduced free cooling alarm, supply air temperature Y2 limit, locking out the compressors if the outdoor air temperature is below a certain temperature. And the item that's used most common enough are our operation mode totalization. So we monitor how many hours the economizer is in staging compressor 1, has compressor 2 on, how many hours we're in free cooling, how many hours we're in mechanical cooling. Now, a lot of these hours, this data on the Zip Economizer itself, can be used with some simple calculations to determine a percentage of what you are saving by not having your compressors on. And these hours are resettable. So if you're going in, doing a full upgrade to the unit, doing some changing out the filters, doing some maintenance to it, routine maintenance, you can go in and reset all these hours to make sure they're set for, for seasonality. Now, the communication module. Most common question I get is, I see the RS-485 there. Does that mean that you guys have BACnet? Unfortunately, right now we do not have BACnet. It is a project that we are actively working on, and we hope to launch early next year. For the time being, it is pretty much an internal use device. I plug into it to just monitor what's going on and see what it is, but it's nothing that's done from a BACnet or communication standpoint, unfortunately. However, the two inputs that you see there, in this case outputs that you see there for alarm, are a dry contact, 24 volts, what have you. You can do a remote alarm, pilot light contact. You can tie it back into the thermostats that have remote alarm capability, have it be a buzzer located in a space near the thermostat that will energize to notify the people in the space that there's a problem in the rooftop unit. So I did mention earlier about these acceptance tests, these functional tests and visual verification. On the Zip Economizer, we've built in our Economizer test. So what this does is it opens the damper and it'll start confirming with you every step of the way that something is functioning. Is it working according to plan? And this is actually meant to meet California Title 24 compliance, but it's used across the country to make sure that the unit's working according to spec. So what we do is we open the damper at 100%. We confirm that the damper did open. We will turn on a compressor. We confirm with the gal that the compressor is running. We'll close if it doesn't. Cycle, close out the damper. We'll confirm that the damper is at a minimum position. And then we'll confirm that the damper did close. And then you know you're final and verified. You've turned on the compressors. If there was an exhaust fan, that would also be part of this process. And we've cycled the damper to fully open, fully closed, and minimum position. So other items that we do as well, we have manual mode, which will allow for connected devices to be manually commanded from the keypad for testing. Damper scaling, not two dampers are made exactly the same. And we have other tests as well. Ventilation test, a rooftop unit specific test just for compressors, and demand control ventilation, which is very similar to the Economizer test by cycling the damper, but to the demand control ventilation minimum positions. Now, alarm counting and timestamp. This is a new feature we added to the device after getting feedback from the field. So not only do we tell you that there is an alarm, as is shown in the picture there, OAT sensor, outside air temperature sensor not detected, we will tell you that the alarm occurred 11 minutes ago, and we will also tell you how many times it occurred. So in this particular case, the alarm occurred 3 times, and one of the alarms occurred 32 minutes ago. And as we saw in the previous screen, another alarm occurred 11 minutes ago. So you can see any trends that are going on, how often it occurred, and any issues. Now, what we take pride in is trying to make things as easy as possible for setup and troubleshooting. Having the Zip Economizer, although be a digital economizer, which is a big buzz phrase now with economizers, it is analog based. And by that, I mean you can go up to the roof with probes and measure all the outputs, all the readings of the device without very little issue. And with our installation operation manual, we've taken troubleshooting to another level. We have over 8 pages of troubleshooting. Anything from it's not powered to it's not operating, there's nothing displayed. We'll walk you through different steps, different items, different possible causes, and what actions you would need to take. Now we realize that retrofitting is a big part of this, like Kevin mentioned. And unfortunately, the majority of the time that's sometimes spent on retrofitting economizer jobs happen to be with retrofitting the actuator, just because of the older linkages that are built into these units and the fact that as soon as you tweak that linkage, everything's going to go out of whack. So what we've done at Belimo is we've leveraged a lot of the knowledge that we've had with our actuators and also with our retrofit group. And we've created these retrofit kits specific for economizer applications. So for example, in this case, you see we've taken one of the Honeywell old black box motors, left the linkage exactly as it is, and replaced it with a TF actuator. In the next slides, we'll show a few more examples of these. That's another picture from a different angle of that same application. And it also works with train units. We do have one for train Voyager units as well. Now, the main core of these retrofit kits are our shaft adapter, and that's the part number above, econ-zip-ACT. Now, what this is a shaft adapter that has the same holes and footprints to line up perfectly to the Honeywell black box motor footprints. So it has the holes, the sequence built into it to allow you to easily swap out the Honeywell black box motor, insert this shaft to the section of the linkage, and attach it to one of the Belimo actuators. We've tested it for over 80 Newton meters, so it would work all the way up to our AF actuators. Now we've taken that shaft adapter and thrown it into kit specifics for our TF actuator as well as our LF actuator. So the kit would give you an L-shaped bracket to mount the TF actuator with, as well as that shaft adapter, giving you everything you would need to retrofit or replace one of the old Honeywell black box motors or many other motors with one of the Belimo ones. Okay. And that's a picture of our LF actuator as well. Now, what we've also done is we realized that there are many times that you would like everything you need in one box, easy, ready to go. So what we've done is we've created these zip packs, which is basically a box set of everything you would need to retrofit the Economizer, including the base unit, that energy module I spoke about earlier, which includes demand control ventilation, exhaust fan, pre-occupancy purge, as well as remote potentiometer. It provides you your 10K supply sensor for your supply air, your spring return actuator, either a TF or an LF. So right there, you're up to easily 12 to 15 ton units with no problem, and your retrofit brackets for that actuator. Now, depending on that configuration, if you're using single dry bulb, differential dry bulb, we would add on the temperature sensors and the enthalpy sensors as are needed. This is how the nomenclature works. So everything Zip Economizer related under the portfolio of products all starts with econ-zip. Your first letter after that will refer to if you're doing single or differential method, and your second letter will refer to if you're doing D for dry bulb, so just temperature, or E for enthalpy, which oddly enough people just refer to kind of as humidity. And then the last two letters refer to your torque or your size of your actuator, either your 35 inch-pounds with your LF or 22 inch-pounds with the TF. But again, remember that if you order the LF actuator with this kit, you will also get the LF retrofit kit with that as well. That's all I have. So Zip really works hard to do the work for you so you can be more efficient. With our easy-to-read automotive-grade LCD display, we go to higher temperatures than any other economizer in the market, and we go to lower temperatures than any other economizer in the market. That LCD display, automotive grade, I get a lot of pushback from a lot of people on that. Does it work just like my backup camera on my car? Not really, but what it really means is that you can have the bright Georgia sun beaming over your shoulder in the summer, and you can still be able to see that display with very little effort. Our zip code patented technology, just by putting in your zip code, everything you need related to climate zones and US standards gets thrown in there automatically. And it's also Canadian postal code accepted. Plug and play. If it's not plugged in, you don't have to worry about setting it up. The acceptance test, the verification of operation. It's that integrated onboard test sequence that just makes sure you're fully compliant with California Title 24 in this case, but also make sure that you know and are rest assured that everything's working before you leave. Fault detection and diagnostics. We'll troubleshoot faults, we'll initiate alarms, and we'll reconfigure for best operation. If, for example, you're doing differential dry bulb, so you have a temperature sensor in the outside and a temperature sensor in the return, and your return sensor disappears, something happens to it, we'll still go into single dry bulb in order to make sure we can still economize, as opposed to just closing off the damper and turning on the compressors 100%. Onboard information, you have help every step of the way. It eliminates the guesswork. And with modular design, it's built for expansion. As you add more items to it, you can add more items to the Zip. Now, are there any questions?
That optional communication, when that you think that may come out?
Say again.
The optional communication module, what's the estimated time of arrival, if that's gonna actually come out for back?
Well, that will actually come out for two reasons. One, it's on my goals. So if I don't have it come out, my mom's not getting her new purse for Christmas. But the other is we hope to launch it next year at ASHRAE. That's the official go-to launch, if not earlier.
Which is February of 2016, correct?
January 2016, and it'll be in
January
Orlando
2016.
ASHRAE this
You
year.
will not need a different base for anything?
We are,
that's coming up?
that's a very good question. We're working very hard to make sure it's backwards compatible. So if you were to buy a Zip today and utilize it without remote communication, just as it's normally used, and then come January, when BACnet's available, if you wanted to integrate it into a DDC system on that building, you would just need that communication module and the software update, which would be given, and then you'd be good to go.
As long as you have that communication module, they're going to give you the
Correct.
software update and it'll be compatible.
So
Correct.
Currently, it acts as a discrete alarm output is all, and has a future port for BACnet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At least we got something.
Yes, see,
Yes.
you've got it there locally.
Yeah.
It's just not coming back on BACnet.
Yeah, but, you know, up on the roof is a long way from where
I
I'm
understand.
I have another question. Maybe I missed this, but with Voyagers, you said plug and play. Exactly how is it plug and play as far as removing that economizer module? I think a train uses, what, digital signal in that?
So plug and play really means more towards the sensors and the equipment installed on the economizer itself. So for example, if the economizer is running and all of a sudden the unit now, the room that it was cooling now becomes an auditorium, and you're adding a CO2 sensor to facilitate that space, or, you know, allow for better use of ventilation, and you added a CO2 sensor to this economizer, to the inputs there, we would automatically detect that something's connected and prompt you to say, CO2 sensors detected, please put in your minimum set point. Whereas if it's not connected, you would never see anything regarding a CO2 sensor on the device.
So as far as connecting it to a Voyager system where there is that digital, that's signal, how easy is that?
Can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear you.
As far as connecting this system to a Voyager system where, you know, if it's without an adapter, you have a digital signal from train?
So regarding the train Voyagers, as long as it doesn't have the Reliatel network, you should be good to go. The Reliatel systems are a little more complicated just because of their control boards and what have you. But overall, just from an economizer standpoint, not from the actuator retrofit or any of that aspect standpoint, you should be good to go. And we do have many cross references from the older economizers to the Zip wire for wire, from this wire to this wire, that are available online as well.
So no Reliatel. So it cannot be used with Reliatel.
Correct.
Good questions. Anyone else? Any more questions?
We actually have a question from the internet, Kevin. Joe wanted to know how many different components there are to ordering, and sort of a ballpark price that would go to like an end user.
Okay, so depending, I will actually go back a slide. If you ordered one of our new Zip packs, you would just need one part number to order. And this would give you the base unit, your actuator, your energy module, and all the sensors for that configuration. So if they just needed single dry bulb with a TF actuator, that's the part number right there, econ-zip-SDTF. And there are a few Zip pack flyers that I don't know if Kevin has passed out already, but that were provided as well, that have all the part numbers in the list pricing there. List pricing for the base unit as individually is $440, and I handle list price. Kevin can also go into a little bit as to what that would be for an end user. But our Zip packs range from $910 to $1,150 for differential enthalpy with an LF. But again, that, you know, $910 includes your base, your energy module, all your sensors that you would need, the retrofit kit, as well as the actuator.
And they can contact Stromquist or walk right out here to the parts store and get that end user price. Anything else?
Oh, I've got a special I'm going to offer you guys, but I can't do it on air. So
Okay.
before you guys leave, we're going to offer you guys, because you're here, a super good special. But I will get shot if They picked it up on the internet.
What's the estimated payback?
Vanessa, the estimated payback or ROI on a Zip Economizer?
That's a current plague of my existence right now. Really what we're seeing is, the majority of economizers are very hard to calculate in terms of a payback. We normally see payback within a few months. There are a lot of local utilities and whatnots that are doing rebates and incentives, and www.zipeconomizer.com ties into all those local rebates, not just for economizers, for pretty much the majority of HVAC retrofits. So if you have a job and are looking and want to know if there's a rebate that you can offer your customer and say, hey, there's a rebate for this, and also get you the job, take a look at that website just for economizer rebates as a whole. They go anywhere from $100 to, I've seen some that are close to $600 for a retrofit for an economizer. So again, kind of depending on the area. In terms of a payback, I will have to plead the fifth, but we do see the payback within a short period of time just based on some of the beta sites we have. We are working on a savings estimator similar to what we have for a few of our other equipment, but the payback is relatively quickly. But I don't have an exact figure to give you, I'm sorry.
What about integration into special equipment such as Aeon or Resnor?
Aeons actually offer the Zip Economizer right now, so they are able to integrate with the units.
That answer it? Okay. Any other questions for Vanessa? Okay, thank you, Vanessa. We're going to let you go. Stay warm up in Connecticut.
Thank you.
Put on your
If you
snow
guys have
boots.
any other questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Vanessa. Okay, very good. Now I just want to take a few minutes staying on the retrofit theme. Well, before we get off of Zip, control trends. The Stromquist University has all this presentation, has all these videos, has links to everything that we've talked about. You can also go to zipeconomizer.com, which is direct to Belimo, and download all the data. You can see the video. If you've got a unit you would like us to look at, contact Stacy or your Stromquist rep. We'll go look at it. I'm in Atlanta very frequently, and I'm always available. Stacy and I yesterday did 2 site visits. One was a retrofit, one was a new project. More than willing to come out and look at what you've got. You've also got access to our customer service and tech support in addition to Stromquist. Although you're Stromquist customer, we consider you our customer too because you're using our product. So anytime you're looking at a unit, you're looking at equipment, you're on a roof, you're in a basement, and you're not sure on an install or a retrofit, rather than waiting to go back up, just call our technical support, 1-800 number. And they're in Danbury, Connecticut, and they're in Reno, Nevada. So you've got access to them from 7 a.m. to about 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They'll troubleshoot with you right there on the phone, solve your problem, or give you the answer that you need, and then you can come and call and order your part from Stromquist. So don't hesitate to use the 800 number that's on all our literature. The other thing I want to talk about, this is 5 minutes, is globe valve retrofit. Everybody's got globe valves, right? Everybody probably has, maybe had, depending upon your age of your facility, may have some pneumatic globe valves still pumping away. In the past, we do a lot of globe valve retrofits because a lot of globe valves, we're going to keep repacking them and keep them in there because you can't take them out, but the valve's still in pretty good shape. We just want to upgrade the actuator because it's either outdated, it's pneumatic, or broken. And in the past, it's been, let's get the calipers out, let's get the flashlight out. We can't cut away the insulation. We're not sure exactly what type of valve it is, and it's quite a process. And I've climbed around many stinky, dirty places that you guys probably see on a regular basis trying to find a valve and what type of actuator it was. We have come out with this universal globe valve retrofit linkage that when I say it changes the game, it changes the game. Don't have to use calipers unless it's a total oddball, and this is going to be less than 2% of the globe valves left out there. we've got one of 4 versions of this universal globe valve retrofit that will work on that valve. First time you do it, it's probably an hour project. And we're going to give you the Allen key you need as the tool required to do that retrofit. That's it. Once you do a couple of them, you'll whittle that down, and a building engineer, technician who knows what they're doing will get this down to about a 30-minute project. Okay? Well, we've done this where we've called some guys up and said, okay, here are the parts, put this on, and they can do it in 5 minutes. Now that's just mechanically making the stuff work. To do it right and make sure it's set, 30 minutes. So what I want to do is show you this 2-minute video that shows you what it looks like, how it works. So take it away, Michael.
Belimo globe valve actuators and retrofit linkages offer easy installation with greater power and flexibility. To install the valve actuator and retrofit linkages on globe valves, follow these simple steps. Define valve bonnet type and install teeth if needed. Teeth are required if using a threaded type valve. Place the clamp over the top of the valve. Tighten evenly using the 2 screws provided. Install the supplied nut on the threaded valve stem. Additional nuts may be required. A nut is not required on a notch type stem. Install the stem adapter on the valve stem located just under the nut or notch. Tighten with a thumb screw first, followed by a stem wing nut. The stem adapter will rise upward as the wing nut is tightened. Install the linkage riser. Align the red centering device on the linkage riser with the top of the stem adapter. This ensures proper alignment from the valve stem to the actuator stem. Tighten with the provided 4 screws using a 4mm wrench. Discard the centering device. Slide the actuator down the linkage riser until the valve stem and the coupler click together. Slide the coupler lock down. Tighten the actuator and the linkage riser using the 2 screws provided. Note the teeth should line up. Set up the direction switch and fail-safe switch in the desired position. Power up and push adaptation button. The installation process is quick and easy, and because one size fits most globe valves, identifying the valve manufacturer is not necessary in all cases. Belimo's globe valve actuators and retrofit linkages feature ease of use, unmatched reliability, and a 5-year warranty. Customers can also take advantage of comprehensive customer service, as well as multi-region and multi-time zone technical support.
So has anybody used that kit yet? Anybody used one? Does it look like something you would be interested in trying? It looks like it's an improvement? Because before, what do you have to do? What all's involved? All right, we send you a list of questions. We may even send you a spec sheet of measurements we need, or we'll come out and do it. Now, it's just that easy. If you can tell us what you got on it now, with the advent of all the phones we have, shoot a picture. Take that actuator off, shoot a picture of the valve stem, send it to me, send it to Stacy, or send it up here, and we'll go identify that with our retrofit specialist and tell you what you need. The people out here on this parts desk, they're experts. They know it. You send them a picture or show them a picture of what you need, they'll have your replacement and a globe valve retrofit. There's a couple of different versions just to fit some, there's a Warren special one, there's a Siemens one, there's a Honeywell one, but for the most part, it's universal. So if you have a globe valve retrofit project we can help you with, again, send us a picture, call Stacy or your Stromquist rep. We'll come out and look at it. We'll walk the site. We'll tell you exactly what you need. We want to make those globe valves easy. And once you do 1 or 2 of those, it's easy. You'll be able to eyeball exactly what you need. So,
Kevin, can I say something?
yeah.
So I got to give a giveaway. One giveaway. Can I give away a hat?
Yes.
No, wait a minute, wait.
What?
Oh, wait.
We're having, those are for drawings.
Well, we're gonna. This is gonna be sort of a question. Whoever gets the answer to this.
You're
okay?
breaking up a set though with my hat.
Well, all right, we'll get them another hat. All right, this is important. So, my guys, let me ask you guys, so what's the real value of this? If anyone give me the answer, we've dealt with clients. And I'm gonna talk you guys through, so the first one that gives me that. So most of you guys have multiple properties you're working with, I'm guessing, right? And so you guys have the thankless task of whoever's low bid on bid day, right? They put stuff in and you guys gotta figure out how it works, right? Okay, so we have clients, first of all, if you like Belimo, this makes a ton of sense. And I'll tell you what, we've had clients, school boards and stuff that have all that. Life is complicated enough without every time you have to replace an actuator. You typically replace like for like, right? So now you got to learn the brand J or the brand H actuator. So it's all this different stuff you have to keep up with. The beauty of this right here, from your guys' perspective, in my opinion, and other people's, is you can learn one actuator. Because guess what? If you can wire one Belimo actuator up, you can wire them all up. So with this, yeah. So you standardize exactly. So first of all, you can keep one or two of these things in stock with a handful of these globe valve linkages. And they have one for the direct coupled actuators too. And if you like these actuators, that's all you ever need. So you can, train one of your associates or whatever, this is how these wire up. They can go out with this linkage retrofit kit. It's a huge advantage. It just makes your life simpler, okay? That's one area that you guys can take back control and go, because first of all, they're gonna be price competitive, okay? Secondly, they work great. They have a 5-year warranty, so nobody's gonna come and go, why do you put Belimo in? Kind of like the old joke, nobody ever fired somebody for saying, why do you use IBM? That's how they stayed in business. So who answered that? I guess I get to keep the hat. Thanks, Steve. All right, this goes back to the set. But think about it that way. That's one way to think about it. It's very easy to do, and like Kevin said, whether you're going to replace them all or just get in the habit of, anytime you need to replace a globe valve actuator, no matter whose brand it is, call Mark on the counter, tell him what you got. You just make that a habit, and in a couple of years, you got all orange there. So cool. And I still got a special for these guys. These guys turn the camera
Yeah,
off
I'm
right
good. We're done.
You're
Thank
done?
you, Stromquist, for letting us come in and do this, and thank you guys for giving us your lunchtime. And I'm going to hand it over to Stacy and Eric now.
Yeah,